Okay, today's deep dive is going to be a little bit different.
Oh,
Yeah, we're going to try to see if we can design a floor plan
okay.
using Microsoft Word,
Interesting.
like the program that we all use for
Yeah.
writing.
Right. Yeah.
So this is based on a YouTube tutorial that we found.
Okay.
And I have to admit, when I first saw it, I was pretty skeptical.
Yeah.
I mean, we usually associate floor plans with, like specialized design software.
Yeah, exactly. Like
Mhm.
CAD programs and things like that.
Exactly.
Exactly something you think about doing in Word.
Right. But, I'm actually kind of excited to see what we can do
Yeah.
with a tool that we use pretty much every day that maybe haven't like fully explored.
I think that's a really great point.
Yeah.
It's really easy to get into that mindset where we think
Yeah.
we need a specialized tool for every single task.
Right.
And it's kind of refreshing to think outside the box a little bit
Yeah.
and see what hidden potential these programs that we're already familiar with might have.
Yeah, exactly. So the tutorial starts by having us set up a document in Word,
Okay.
an A3 landscape document,
Mhm.
and then it asks us to set the measurements to centimeters.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. And this is because the tutorial uses this really straightforward scaling method
Okay.
where basically 1 centimeter on the document represents 1 foot in the actual space,
Got it.
like a 1-to-1.
Yeah, 1-to-1.
Yeah. So that's pretty intuitive.
Yeah, I mean, that's super easy to understand, even if you're not like a professional designer.
Right.
Just 1 centimeter equals 1 foot.
Exactly.
You can easily visualize that.
And the other thing that's really nice about this scaling approach is that it ensures that your plan stays accurate,
Okay.
even if you print it out at different sizes.
Right.
So the proportions remain consistent,
Yeah.
just like on a map.
It's like using a map scale.
Right, exactly.
So figure out like, okay, this distance on the map represents this distance in the real world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so to make that scale even clearer, the tutorial shows us how to create a visual scale
Okay.
along the edges of the document using text boxes.
Oh, that's clever.
Yeah. It's like having a ruler built right into your page,
Mm-hmm.
constantly reminding you of the scale you're working with.
Yeah, like a built-in reference.
Exactly. So, okay, we've got our document set up.
Right.
We've got our scale in place.
We're ready to go.
Now, this is where it starts to get really interesting.
Okay.
The tutorial has us use words grid lines
Okay.
and the snap to grid feature to precisely position elements on the floor plan.
Interesting. So we're like actually going to start drawing now?
Yeah.
That's kind of surprising, actually.
I know, right?
Because those grid lines are usually for like aligning text.
Right. Yeah.
Never thought about using them for drawing.
Right. It's funny how once you start to see these features in a new light,
Mm-hmm.
it opens up all these creative possibilities that you might not have considered before.
Yeah, you're totally right.
Yeah.
Like suddenly it feels a lot more like a CAD program almost.
Right.
Who knew?
Who knew that Word had these capabilities?
Exactly.
And this resourceful approach, really shines through in the next step, too.
Okay, what's that?
So to represent inches within our 1 centimeter to 1 foot scale,
Right.
the tutorial has us create this tiny little 1 centimeter square
Okay.
and then divide it into 12 segments.
Wow, okay, so we can actually get down to like the inch level.
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive,
Right.
especially when you think about the limitations of a word processor.
Yeah, and it shows that the creator of this tutorial really thought it through.
Yeah.
They really wanted to make this approach as accurate as possible.
Exactly. And as user-friendly as possible, too.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking of efficiency, the tutorial also emphasizes using copy-paste
Mm-hmm.
and grouping techniques to streamline the design process.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, nobody wants to redraw the same element over and over again.
Absolutely. It's all about working smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
Exactly. Master a few keyboard shortcuts. Learn how to group elements together.
Yep.
Then you can really focus more on the design itself
Yeah, exactly.
and less on those repetitive tasks.
Okay, so now we're ready to actually start drawing the structure of our floor plan.
All right, let's do it.
So the tutorial provides us with these specific house specifications,
Okay.
like wall thicknesses, door dimensions, window sizes. And it emphasizes that all of these real-world measurements need to be converted to our chosen scale.
Right.
So this is where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
We're not just talking about abstract concepts anymore. It's
Right.
like we're actually applying them to a real-world scenario.
Exactly. And the tutorial starts by having us draw the porch,
Oh.
which is 6 feet by 8 feet in real life.
Mhm.
So using our 1 centimeter to 1 foot scale, we
Well.
draw a rectangle that's 6 centimeters by 8 centimeters.
That's so simple when you put it like that.
I know, right? And the tutorial walks us through every single step.
Okay.
So we understand how to accurately represent those dimensions.
Nice.
Now here's a really clever trick that the tutorial uses when we start drawing the outer walls.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
So instead of like measuring each section individually,
Right.
it shows us how to subtract the porch length.
Okay.
Remember, that's 6 feet or 6 centimeters on our plan from the total house width to determine the remaining wall section.
Ah, that's clever.
Right.
Like a little bit of problem solving.
Exactly. It's about working efficiently and accurately.
Yeah, and it's a valuable skill to have, like even outside of this specific tutorial.
For sure. So with our outer walls drawn, we then start working on the inner walls.
Okay.
And again, the tutorial emphasizes precise measurements and calculations.
That's the accurate.
Yeah, it's not just about drawing lines.
Right.
It's about accounting for the thickness of both the inner and outer walls
Yeah, that's important.
to make sure that our plan is as accurate as possible.
Right, because a small error in the drawing could translate to a big problem in the real world.
Exactly. Like if you were actually building and renovating a house.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's important to pay attention to detail.
Absolutely. And it just goes to show you that even a seemingly simple program like Word can be used to create some really detailed plans.
Right.
If you know how to use it effectively.
Okay, so now we come to another key element of any floor plan.
Which is?
The doors and windows.
Ah, yes, of course.
Yeah.
Those are important.
And as you might imagine, this requires even more precise calculations and some pretty clever techniques.
Okay, well, I'm definitely interested to hear more about those details.
Yeah, me too. Let's dive into those after a quick break.
Sounds good.
So we left off talking about how to add doors and windows.
Right, those crucial elements.
And like I said, this is where it gets even more detailed in the tutorial.
Okay.
Because we have to make sure that they're represented accurately on the plan.
Yeah, every detail matters.
For example, the tutorial is super specific when it comes to calculating the dimensions of the doors.
Okay, how so?
Well, it specifies that the doors are 3 feet 6 inches wide by 6 feet 8 inches tall.
Wow.
With a 3-inch frame.
That's a lot of detail.
Right. It's like they really want to make sure that we're creating an accurate representation.
Yeah, it's not just like draw a rectangle and call it a door.
Right, exactly. And then when it comes to positioning the windows, the tutorial uses this really clever hack.
Okay, I'm listening.
It tells us to use a temporary rectangle.
Oh, interesting.
To ensure that the windows are placed at a specific distance from the walls.
Okay, that makes sense. I guess sometimes you got to get a little creative.
Right, it's like using the tools in a way that they weren't necessarily intended to be used.
Yeah, and that's kind of a valuable skill in itself, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like being able to adapt and problem solve when you don't have the perfect tool.
Right. Sometimes those limitations can actually lead to some pretty creative solutions.
Okay, so now let's talk about the windowsills.
Right.
This is another detail that I thought was really well done in the tutorial. So they use these freeform lines and dashed outlines
Interesting.
to create this really realistic representation of the sills projecting out from the walls.
Oh, that's cool. So it's not just a flat window on the wall.
Right. It actually looks like it has some depth.
It's those little touches that make a big difference.
Yeah. And it shows how you can use even the most basic features in Word to add detail and dimension to your plan.
It's all about being resourceful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, perhaps one of the most impressive parts of this tutorial is how it tackles the stairs.
Oh, yeah, stairs. Those can be tricky.
Even in dedicated design software.
Right, there's angles and measurements and...
Exactly. But this tutorial breaks it down into these manageable steps.
Okay.
Using squares and lines to represent each tread.
Okay, so it simplifies it a bit.
Right. And what's even more impressive is that they actually managed to create this visual effect of the stairs.
So you can actually see them going up.
Yeah, even though we're working in a two-dimensional program.
Wow, that's pretty amazing.
And it shows a real understanding of perspective, like how to make something look three-dimensional even when it's not.
And to finish it all off, the tutorial adds those final touches.
Right. Like furniture symbols, text descriptions, and dimension lines.
It's amazing how they've managed to use the basic tools in Word to create such a detailed plan.
I know, it's like they squeezed every last drop of functionality out of that program.
It really challenges our assumptions about what's possible with everyday software.